So I know of 2 YouTube channels that do off-grid living in the state of Missouri. Myself, and then there's another guy. Now this guy, I know exactly where he's at. Well, not exactly. I mean, I couldn't drive to his house. But I do know of the town that he has talked about in his videos and live feeds. And I lived exactly 10 miles away from that town that he has talked about many times. So when I know he goes to town, he is talking about that town that I live 10 miles from. I went there all the time to grocery shop and to go to the library. And I don't think either one of us has made any illusions that we live far away from anybody. So I'm not really sure how I want to approach this video, but I was called out. Well, I feel like I was called out. They specifically said YouTube channels, so multiple channels from Missouri. So since I only know of 2, there could be more. I assume they were including me. Of course, I'm not as big as that other channel in Missouri, and I'm definitely not as big as that channel who called me out. Here's the deal. This family has decided that they wanted to move to Alaska and live off-grid in a small house. They were telling everybody how they were lied to. Now, there's a little trick to this, but what bothered me is in the video, they talked about YouTube channels in Missouri. Well, I don't feel like I've lied to anybody. I've tried to show you all the struggles that we go through. I've detailed everything. So even if you thought that what we're doing is very romantic, I don't feel like that I've hidden anything from you. Now, the one thing I have hidden from you is my solid waste disposal, my septic tank. And the only reason I did that is because the code enforcement guy said to keep the haters off YouTube from calling him all the time about my septic tank, just don't talk about it. But before he said that to me, I showed you that we were burning our waste, made videos about it. I didn't go into graphic details, but I showed you the burn barrels. I showed you, as a matter of fact, we still have the remnants of the cedar that we were using to get it to inferno. We wanted it to be like an incinerator. Wanted it really, really hot. So we still have some of that cedar that we cut down to do that with. There, perfect example that I haven't hidden anything from you. I've explained how Carolyn has done laundry, and that has infuriated hundreds of people on my channel. Hundreds. And I've even explained how it's infuriated hundreds of people on my channel. But this big channel in Alaska was complaining about laundry. That they never thought it was going to be so much work to have to do laundry by hand with a plunger. Well, how do you not know that? I've explained it many times that Carolyn comes out about 3 times a week, well, about every 3rd day, I should say, and does laundry. By hand, I fill the things up with the bucket. I've explained all that. So if you have some sort of illusion that this is going to be easy work, well, I don't know how that is an illusion. Now, what I have said is Carolyn likes to do it for the exercise. But even at that, I just recently told you, 2 days ago, that we bought a wash machine because the subscribers were so mean that when my mother finally said, Carolyn needs a wash machine, I thought, well, I've lost this battle. I guess I better get a wash machine. So the viewers seem to think that doing laundry by hand is just beyond the pale. It just can't be done, shouldn't do it. That they finally have made my life so miserable that I went and got a wash machine. Now, Carolyn says she's never going to use it. So I guess in order for it to be used, I'm going to have to do the laundry. But that's beside the point. I showed you step by step for, 3 to 6 months how to build a tiny house. All the videos are, well, I think I have a playlist. You can go to my channel, go to playlist, you can see tiny house build. I've showed you how to can, and I even showed you how to can on a back porch using a Coleman stove. And I then got the camper, the big camper that we just bought this last spring, and then I told you how much easier it was to do in the camper. So again, if you had any illusions that this was easy, crawling around on the back porch trying to fill jars of broth, or chicken with broth, I don't know how you found that so easy. I've showed you how to hook up the solar panels and the struggles that we've had to deal with for the last 2 years because I was so busy doing other things that I couldn't focus on the solar panels. Once I got them set up, I just kind of left them alone. I didn't touch them too much. And about every 6 months I would have to come out and clean the terminals, and because they get all corroded and it was a big mess. Weeds were growing all over them. It was terrible. We put it on a stand and realized the stand wasn't going to work because they were getting too hot, so we set them down on the ground. That first year I was trying to cool them off with water so we could run the air conditioner in our little truck camper, and it was just a constant struggle. We've got 2 generators, and everybody was complaining to me that we run the generator too much. Well, obviously we live pretty close to town because I'm getting gas for the generator. I don't know how, again, that I've said anything that has made this a romantic lifestyle, other than I feel like this has been the least stressful time in my life. Now that everything is kind of settled down and we're getting, I don't want to say modern, but things are getting easier. For example, this last summer I showed you step by step all the upgrades I made to my solar panels. I moved them up the hill, got a new charge controller. We got this shed. We put the shed out there, then we put all the batteries in there, got them all cleaned up, nice looking, organized. I got 2 inverters. I got a 1,000-watt inverter, so that's all new. Got a 2,000-watt inverter. They're true sine wave instead of modified sine wave. And now we can run the well pump. That was massive. That takes so much effort off of me now, because before I would have to run that generator, the 2,500-watt dual fuel propane generator. Well, prior to that, we had a 2,000-watt, and it struggled to run that well pump. So I was out there in the middle of winter. That propane generator didn't want to start. The rope was so hard to pull, it was just a nightmare. And so when we got down to negative degrees, that rope wouldn't pull. It was so bad that I broke the pull rope spindle twice. So I had to take the generator apart, put it back together. I don't have to do any of that now. But it took time to get there. And I've showed you every step, every struggle, and every success. And eventually, you'll have more success than struggles. So now, I really don't have much to do around here. We're always trying to find things to do. I showed you step by step, cutting firewood. That was, what, 3 years ago. Went down to a city park down the road a ways, cut down that huge oak. And I was driving it up here, we were splitting it. I was using a maul. Now, to me, that wasn't too bad. Carolyn and I was even explaining how I did this. Carolyn and I would go out there for a couple hours, I don't know. I'd split 4 or 5 logs. She'd use that manual log splitter. She'd do 2 or 3 logs, we'd stop, and then we'd come back out later and do it again. We weren't spending a lot of time on it, but before we knew it, it was done. And so now we had 15 years worth of firewood. Really, we're young enough that we can still do it. If you get a truckload, I would say what we would need to do is when I start getting into my late 50s, maybe get 3 truckloads a year. That way it can dry, because I really like it now that the firewood is 3 years in its drying process. It burns really nice. Whereas before, it was even last year, it was still a little wet at 2 years. There's Skitty. She's checking on me. I've told you this many times. She checks on me to make sure I'm okay when I come down here. She doesn't like it. So now we have the 12 solar panels. We have all the electric we need now. So much so that Carolyn has been heating hot water when she wants to do dishes with a coffee pot. So, I mean, we've even got that modern convenience now. Then we're going to get this wash machine. That's 300 watts. We'll hook that up to the solar panels, and on a day like this, be no problem to run the wash machine. I don't feel like I've made any illusions about how easy or how hard this is. I don't think I've said either way. I enjoy this. I've said that many times. I enjoy what I'm doing. Now we have the chickens. That may be the hardest thing I do all day. Well, I don't even know if it's hard. It's the thing that I dread the most. I come down in the morning and I open up the door. That's no big deal. That's at 5 o'clock in the morning. I open up the door. That way when they're ready to come out, they can come out. About 10 o'clock in the morning, I give them what we call a treat. It's not really a treat. It's a higher protein food. So especially in the winter, well, a couple things goes on in the winter. One, we want to get them built up on some body fat. So you give them corn. And the reason you want to do that is so they'll stay warmer. Also, you give them that corn later in the day. That way they're burning that energy about the time they're going to bed. So that heats them up also. But while you're doing that, then you need to give them a higher protein food because you don't want their protein to deplete, because you're already not going to get enough eggs throughout the winter. They're going to slow way down through the winter. At, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the evening, now it's dark, I come down here, I check to make sure I got enough battery life to get me through the night so we can run that freezer. And then I feed the chickens, close the door so they can sleep, and collect the eggs. Make sure they got water. In the wintertime is a little bit harder because when it gets cold, I'm gonna have to come down here several times a day to give them fresh water. Now somebody's gonna say, well, just give me a little heater. Well, then that means I gotta run electric and give them water. How hard is that? But this is the mindset that either it has to be really easy or it's really hard. And I would say it's somewhere in between. It's a job. That's what it is. It's a job. I have a job I do every day. This pays me. Well, of course, I got YouTube that pays me actual money, but this pays me. The solar panels pay me. And then there's this complaint that you'll never make enough electricity to give you the conveniences to make off-grid easy. Well, I'm not trying to make it easy. I don't understand this. Either you want a primitive lifestyle or you don't. Now, here's what was so astonishing to me is Carolyn and I, I'm 52, she's 62. Her biggest stress of the day right now is trying to keep on Social Security so we can get Social Security. She's been waiting on that forever, and she just called again today. So that's her stress. She doesn't like calling people. She has social anxiety. We don't have kids. I would say having kids doing this would make life a lot more difficult. And so you have this fantasy of Laura Ingalls Wilder and the kids coming out and they're all doing their chores together and washing the clothes together. And but in reality, what it was is mom was washing the clothes, the kids were out there chasing the chickens, and dad was out there in the field. That's just the way it was. But I've made no illusion this is Laura Ingalls Wilder. I do try to make things as convenient as possible. The whole point of me living here was to be able to retire. Retire is the wrong word. Semi-retire, relax, retire, I don't know. But I wanted to be able to kick back a little. I've had a pretty stressful life, ran my own companies and different things, and I didn't like that fast-paced life all the time, so I wanted to slow down. But if I'm out here putting fence rows up and trying to keep the one thing the guy said is he has to go out trout fishing every day so he can get food. Well, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna hope that I get food and I get enough trout, or that I don't run into a bear or break my ankle, and I'm relying on my abilities to get food every day in the wild to feed us. So I show you how to can food. We go out and buy the sales. I've even shown you that we drive to town. I remember making a video of showing you the lake as we were driving by. I held the camera out the window. I've showed you that we go to town. I've showed you that we buy bags of chicken and we can it up. And we also butcher our chickens. But I'm not going to rely on that, because remember last year, we had chickens get attacked by a dog. We lost, I think 9 of them, don't quote me. But it was enough that it was pretty disappointing. Well, if we're relying on chickens and a dog attacked 9 of them, well, now we're going to starve. So, no, my definition of off-grid, and always has been, is not being hooked up to the electric grid and the water grid, and trying to be as self-sustaining as possible. And now I do feel like that every year we get a little closer to that, because now we're not hardly running a generator at all. So we've really gotten away from having to go out and get gas all the time. I can buy 10 gallons of gas and it'll last me 2 months now, whereas 10 gallons would have been just over 2 weeks. That's more self-sustaining. I've talked about the SHTF, because apparently if you live off grid, you got to worry about SHTF. Well, SHTF, I would shut off the freezer, and then I wouldn't have to run the generator at all. Then the solar panels could be dedicated to the well pump. So we got water, we got food, and of course SHTF, you don't have enough food. You start eating raccoons at that point. You really start thinking about what you can eat. I don't feel like I've said anything that you should go move to Alaska out in the middle of nowhere, where you can only get in by a helicopter, it seems like, with a bunch of kids. I don't know if I mentioned this. They had more kids than I could count in this video. So she's doing laundry for all those kids, trying to feed all those kids and do dishes for all those kids. It's not feasible. It's just me and Carolyn. If I don't feel like filling the water tank today, I don't have to fill the water tank. But when you got 6 kids, you better fill that water tank, because you're not going to have enough water for the kids. If you don't have laundry done, to me and Carolyn, it's not a big deal. When the kids have been out playing in the mud all day, they better have a change of clothes. I said this as a nomad also. I don't think it's a great idea to be taking your kids along on your adventure. I know a lot of people seem to think that, oh, this is great education and homeschooling. Well, I homeschooled my child. Told you this. She went to college at 14 years old, has all kinds of degrees now. If you think your kid is getting an education because they know how to do dishes or they know how to butcher a chicken, these are life skills, things they should know how to do. It's not homeschooling. Raise your kids and then go for the adventure. That way you have no guilt that you can't get things done. So if you'll click this up next box to take you to a video where I was talking about being debt-free. I hope I can inspire you to be realistic with your dreams when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.